As film gets more popular and shoved more and more into pop culture, I see more people wanting to dip their toes in, but kind of struggling knowing where to begin. The biggest issue, at least for most people starting out, is getting a camera that isn't expensive but is still reliable so that they're not wasting frames and subsequently money. With that being said, I think with most people there is an innate interest with point and shoots because they are generally more automatic and just easier and more informal to shoot. Instead of complicated exposure settings, you pretty much only have to worry about composition and if the flash is on or off. With that being said, in an ideal world, yes, you would be finding a camera in a charity shop for like $5. But getting a reliable working camera from a thrift shop is a whole different set of knowledge to cover in a future video. Instead, I know many of my friends at this point would rather trade a little bit more of their money versus time and the confusion that comes along with hunting down a reliable, good to use, and cheap point and shoot. So today we'll go through a handful of cheap point and shoots that are still found in relative abundance in 2024. Up first is the Pentax SPO70. The SPO70 first was released in 1992, right before the dawn of the digital camera era. It comes with a 35 to 70mm zoom lens, has a pretty standard flash, and is fully automatic. The top has an LCD screen which shows where you're at on the roll, and a handful of controls to help guide the camera. The camera overall is easy to use with its automation, but gives some control when shooting, which is nice. Which, speaking of, the lens renders sharp images, and thankfully there's quite a bit of these on the market. They come in at around $50 for the time being, and would make a great informal point and shoot that is small enough to put in your pocket. Next up, the Ricoh FF series. The Ricoh FFs aren't quite as small as many of these other pocketable cameras, but it makes up for it in its aesthetic, usability, and control. With its 35mm focal length and bright viewfinder, using the camera is quite fun and feels so comfortable to carry and shoot. It also has quite a good light meter in it, all things considered it being a point and shoot. Additionally, it has a manual flash on and off switch, which I think adds a nice level of control to these normally pretty simple cameras. With its 80s aesthetic and sleek maneuverability, yet seemingly tight control, I think the Ricoh is a really underrated camera right now. Coming in at around $100, I think you'd be hard pressed to find many more that trump this slightly larger point and shoot at this price point. Third on the list, the Olympus AF10. The Olympus AF10 is a compact 35mm film camera introduced in the 1990s. It was designed to offer convenience and portability to amateur photographers. It's an affordable and straightforward 35mm film camera that offers decent image quality and is so easy to use. What I love above everything else is how small it is and its price point. With its sleek design, fixed 35mm f3.5 lens, and for only around $50, it's a great camera to fill the point and shoot role for your camera lineup. Despite some issues in backlit situations, which all point and shoots will struggle with, the AF10 also has an on-body flash, which proves quite useful for said situations and low-light photos. Next is the Minolta Riva Zoom 90. This fully automatic camera certainly fits the bill for size and compactness of a point and shoot, being fully pocketable and easily fitting in a handbag. This iteration specifically has a 38mm to 90mm lens, giving you good flexibility and a decently wide lens, but there are a good amount of slightly different variants of this camera. The biggest issue is the slight shutter delay when using the camera. After pushing the button, there is a moment between the photo being fired and the button being pressed, but the camera comes in at around $50 and cheaper for it, so it's definitely a more budget-friendly one. Despite it being entirely plastic, it would be perfect for nights out and backpacking where you don't want to bring something that could get broken. And last but certainly not least, the Pentax PC35AF. Just like the Minolta, this also has a handful of different varieties, but seemingly the best, especially for a beginner, is the PC35AF. Despite its annoying beeping when it thinks that you should use the flash, the camera, which can be easily found at a charity shop, is quite surprising in its quality, especially in its lens, which is a fixed 35mm f2.8 that packs quite a sharp punch to it. Its flash is also quite strong, which, as I've pointed out before, is important when you're using point and shoots. In many cases, unless it's your main camera, you're going to be using it at parties or in not perfect lighting, so being able to have an on-camera flash to manipulate the lighting conditions is huge. This camera comes in at around $50, which I think is a good way to get into a cheaper 35mm platform. Additionally, I do think many of these could be found at a thrift store for less than $10. If not these models specifically, something similar for sure. I would suggest bringing some working batteries and overall look at the condition of the camera to see if it'll work. Honestly, I think that this could be a whole separate video in and of itself. I think for more seasoned film photographers, it's a lot easier and more palatable to be able to go into a thrift shop and kind of see what cameras will work out for them, versus if you're just at the tip of the iceberg trying to get into film photography. Obviously, buying a film camera at a charity shop that you don't really know if it's going to work or if it's tested or whatnot is quite intimidating, to say the least. With that being said, while I was scripting this video, I was actually able to come up with a handful of other cameras that I wanted to talk about, so stay on the lookout for another video coming soon talking about some more cheap point and shoots. Surprisingly enough, I think there are still a good amount that are available in 2024, despite kind of the trend of point and shoots reaching almost an apex, I think, this past year. I think there are a lot of under the radar ones that you can find for like less than $50 that would fit the style of photography that most people are doing with these, the more informal photos of friends out at the bars, you know, that type of youth lifestyle stuff, I guess. Otherwise, let me know down in the comments what you would recommend to a friend if they had asked what cheap point and shoot they would recommend to get into. I've had a handful of people reach out, I feel like within the last couple weeks especially, you know, wanting to get a camera for the summer and looking for something that's cheap, reliable, good quality, etc. Obviously, fitting a camera that's going to fit all those criteria extensively, I think, is a bit of a stretch at this point. I think, as with most things, you're going to have to compromise in one lane, which is something to think about and something that I tell them. But let me know what you would recommend. Yeah, I think that's going to wrap it up for this one, guys. Till the next one, stay safe, stay shooting. Adios.